Hello, and welcome to this week's meeting of the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. My name is Farheen, and I thank you all for joining us today. Each week, we connect with and hear from speakers who usually have a message focused on our love for innovation, entrepreneurship, and education. Today, we have a presentation by Dr. Sophia Yin, the CEO and co-founder of Pandia Health. She has a passion for making women's lives easier, preventing unplanned pregnancies, and educating women about #PeriodsOptional. Dr. Yin serves as a clinical associate professor of pediatrics at Stanford Medical School. She is a reproductive health specialist and co-founded 2 nonprofit organizations in her endeavors to improve the lives of women. I am extremely excited for Dr. Yin to be with us today, especially because she is doing something that I want to do with the rest of my life. So with that said, Dr. Yin, please take it away.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. And I'm really excited to talk about periods optional. And so let me get the slide up. So today we're going to talk about #periods optional, decreasing #period problems, which you've probably seen trend on Instagram and other things in life. And as a result of decreasing the frequency that women bleed each month, we will then discuss how it decreases cancer and it decreases landfill. So there are a lot of benefits to not having to bleed every single month. Oh, there we go. So every single month, a woman builds up that lining and she's waiting for an embryo. And if an embryo doesn't happen, then she bleeds. And then there's blood all over the sheets and on the panty and on tampons and maxi pads. And for those who've never gone through this, it is a random and horrific thing. It's not like it comes every Monday at 3 p.m. It just comes when it comes, and you always have to be prepared for it. And I had the epiphany trying to get pregnant because I'd been on the birth control pill, and the birth control pill patch a ring all lighten your periods. But to get pregnant, I had to have a full-on building of the lining, as opposed to with the birth control pill patch ring, it's just, but to build a baby, you have to grow the whole lining full on to catch an embryo, and then an embryo didn't happen, and blood. And I realized the only reason we built that is to catch an embryo. And if we're not trying to catch an embryo from age 12, which is average menarche in the United States, to 26, average age of first child, but for those of us who have to go to medical school or higher education or took a while to find our significant other, 35 years old, that's 23 years of incessant menstruation for no purpose at all. And then if you pop out 2 kids, then you have the other end of it too, where you continue to bleed. And if you're not trying to have a baby, why waste energy on building up that lining and then bleeding every single month? And every time you build up that lining, you risk endometrial cancer because a mutation can happen. Every time you pop out an egg, you risk ovarian cancer. We don't know if it's the popping or if it's the tube or whatever, but it increases your risk of ovarian cancer. And the only other way to decrease your risk of ovarian cancer, other than turning off the egg popping every single month, is taking out those eggs. And we do not recommend a bilateral oophorectomy unless you're done having children. So this is a great way to prevent ovarian cancer. And I thought I came up with this idea in 2006, but I want to give credit where credit is due. Dr. Coutinho of South America came up with this idea and actually wrote an entire book with all the citations. So for those of you who want to go to Amazon, I bought one of the copies. Is Menstruation Obsolete? Was introduced by Dr. Coutinho and Dr. Shelley Segal, who is the founder of the original implant, Norplant, which had 5 implants in the arm. And then as I was doing my research for this, I read Malcolm Gladwell. You may have heard of him from Tipping Point and Blink, is a great author, wrote an article called John Rock's Error in March 10, 2000 in the Annals of Medicine and also in the New Yorker. And he discussed, excuse me, the founders of the birth control pill. There were 3 men. One was a devout Catholic who went to church every day, not once a week Catholic, but every day Catholic. And then there was 2 PhDs. And as an MD, I usually leave the science up to the PhDs because they know the science and I kind of apply it. However, Dr. Rock felt he could get the birth control pill through the Catholic Church. His argument was, I'm just making periods regular, so then you can practice the rhythm method. And he got it through the nuns. The nuns are very liberal, very cool. He got it through the priests, very unusual. And then it hit the Pope. The Pope figured it out and it got vetoed. But because Dr. Rock won that argument against his 2 co-founders, the PhDs were like, Why are you making women bleed every month? It could be every 3 months, every 6 months. It could be never. But Dr. Rock goes, I'm going to get this through the Catholic Church. And because he won that argument, every method since has had this artificial, unnecessary bleed 1 week out of 4. And I also just heard from the head of the Feminist Majority Foundation that one of the founders and the other men had also agreed that if a woman didn't bleed every month, she wouldn't feel like a woman. But if I'd been on that panel, I would have said no blood, never, 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 never. Or if one of these other women that are on this chat as well, I think you would agree. Ideally, we would like to decide when we have bleeding, and ideally as little bleeding as possible. So in Malcolm Gladwell's article, he talked about Beverly Strassman, and she studies the Dogon tribe in Mali in Africa. And that's like now. That's not like way 1930s or something like that, but now. Whenever a woman has a period or a bleed, she is banished to the menstruation hut. And she studied these women for 736 nights. And what she found on the left is the Dogon tribe, natural, without interference of society. They have their periods starting at age 16. We have our periods on the right starting at age 12. They have enough nutrition to support 7 periods a year. We have lots of nutrition in the United States and first world countries. We have 13 periods a year. They have 8 to 9 children. We have 2. They breastfeed for 12 months exclusively. We breastfeed for 0, 3, or 6 months. How many periods does a woman have when she's pregnant or exclusively breastfeeding? 0. And so that is the natural state of a female, according to my OB-GYN professor, and also according to this research, is fewer periods. So they have 110 periods in their lives, and we have 350 to 400. They have no ovarian or endometrial cancer. We have ovarian and endometrial cancer. And it's not like they die at 30. They die at 70, and we're dying at 70 to 80 years old. And so they are in an incessant pregnant or breastfeeding state. Not saying that's the state we should be in, but that's, quote, more natural than this incessant menstruation that we've now come to because of just our lives. So again, incessant menstruation is historically new, and you really don't need to build up that endometrium and then bleed when you don't get pregnant unless you're trying to get pregnant. So just illustrate this, that your endometrium is going up and down and up and down and up and down, but also your hormones are going up and down and up and down and up and down. And you can imagine if you're a teenager and you already got drama, this hormone up and down is not a good thing. If you have acne, hormone up and down is not a good thing. Depression, seizure disorder, thyroid, situations where you want to keep hormones smooth. You would much rather the bottom one, if you stay on the birth control pill, patch, or ring, or the IUD, or the implant, or the shot, the hormone's going to be smooth, the lining of your uterus is going to be and then you can decide how often you want to bleed. So even those who are doing 3 weeks this and then bleeding, you're still getting a drop in the hormones. So you don't need to drop that hormone every single month unless you're trying to have a baby, and then it shouldn't drop because then you end up pregnant and then it just keeps growing. And as I mentioned before, these are health conditions that are better with stable hormones or no bleeds. Acne, arthritis, depression, diabetes, seizures, certainly period-related medical things such as bad, evil, painful periods, heavy periods resulting in anemia, PMS. If you don't have menstrual, then there's no premenstrual syndrome. And then if you're bleeding already, if you have hemophilia, or you have von Willebrand's factor disease, or you have anemia, you don't want to lose any more blood than necessary. And as I mentioned before, by not turning over the ovary popping out of egg, turning over the lining every single month, you decrease ovarian and endometrial cancer. And then interestingly enough, you also decrease colorectal cancer. So other conditions, infectious disease. Blood is an infectious agent. And if you have HIV or hepatitis B and you've got blood in an uncontrolled environment, you can obviously spread that. Developmental disabilities. If you've got the brain of a 5-year-old and you've got blood coming out, you don't understand and you're flipping out and you may take the blood and smear it around. It's not a good thing for a 5-year-old to have blood roaming around. Or if you have physical limitations, it's really hard to get a tampon up there or whatever if you're half paralyzed or your bottom part of your body can't be reached easily. And then lastly, if you're in a military mobilized group and you're running around and they've got attack dogs hunting you down, you leading a trail of blood or used tampons or maxi pads is a risk to your unit. And then quality of life. The example that I give is that pre-med, MIT, in the middle of a biochem final, bam, blood. And I'm just like, ah. And I look to my left and I look to my right. The two guys are like, do, 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 do. And would that I were they, right? And do I finish the final or do I run to the bathroom? And I finished the final because I'm a pre-med. But then I ran to the bathroom and I was a little distracted during my final. So this happening 1 week out of 4 to anybody that has a uterus is not cool. Environmental, people always, I need to get funding from different people, and so we can hit up the green people. Women use 10,000 to 13,000 tampons, maxi pads, and just imagine that landfill building up. And then most importantly is financial and educational. Dysmenorrhea, painful periods, is the #1 cause of missed work and school in women under the age of 25. And that is not in third world countries, though certainly if they banish you to the menstruation head, yes. But in our country, in the United States. And when I give a talk to a room of 30 women, even when it's 30 CEOs, 3 of them will come up to me afterwards and go, yeah, I feel cold and tired and horrible pains. And I was like, you are a CEO. Even if you should have insurance, those startups can't sometimes afford it, but you should go see a doctor and you shouldn't suffer. So at the very least, we need to educate women. If you are in pain and you are missing school, please see a doctor because there's stuff we can do about it. Don't suffer, don't miss work. And if we want women to fully participate, they can't be taken out 1 week out of 4 from pain and blood. And then academic competitiveness. They've shown in research, as physicians, we check for anemia. And once you have anemia, we check for iron deficiency. But what it is you lose enough iron and then you get anemia. So when they checked for kids who didn't have yet anemia but had iron deficiency, they had lower math scores. And then when they gave them the iron, their math scores went up. So women are every single month are being depleted. I like to think of looking at my arm, slicing it open and letting blood fall out 1 week out of 4. If we didn't have that blood letting out, we might be able to do math permutations and computations a little bit faster because we have more oxygen running through our head. And then, as we talked about before, worried if you're in the middle of your SAT, I tell parents of teenagers, are you going to do better on your period or off your period? I'm pretty sure off your period. And so I have 2 young girls and I want them to go out there and show men that they're equal, if not going to crush all the men, but I also don't want them distracted by blood. And then the ways that you can do this, you see the beautiful images up there. You can use the vaginal ring, which a woman just puts up into her vagina and can change it once a month. It has 35 days worth of medication. Every month has less than 35 days, so you can just change it out. The patch you can put on for a week at a time, but you can't do it more than 12 weeks because after 12 weeks, the hormone builds up. So every 12 weeks, you got to stop it for a week and then restart again. And then the pill you can do just, you see the 3 weeks, the 4 weeks pack on the bottom, but you would just skip the last week, which is usually a sugar pill, and go straight into the next pack. And then you could also use the progestin-only methods, the implant, the IUD with hormone, or the shot. About 30% of women on the implant or IUD lose their periods, and 70% get lighter. And then the shot, about 70% lose their periods after the 3rd shot. So the important thing to take home from this is if you aren't on any medications, then you should have a period every month. Otherwise, I as a physician need to look for the reasons why. Do you have a thyroid problem? Do you have anorexia? Are you not eating enough for the calories that you're expending? Do you have a tumor in your head? Other issues that are going on. However, with hormonal therapy, not having a period is not a problem. And that we now have the technology to turn that off and make women's lives better, more productive, less cancer, less landfill. And let's make #periods optional. This is our cuterus. The uterus is much happier without blood. And if you want to refer your friends to this similar talk, I have my TEDx talk at the bottom of pandiahealth.com/periods optional. And that's it.
Thank you
Love it.
so much, Dr. Yin. Go ahead and unshare your screen.
Okay. Let's see.
I'm honored to be the only male here.
I love that you are here.
And I'm really in touch with my feminine side. I've got 2 sisters, 2 daughters, a mother, grandmothers.
I mean, everyone has
and
a woman
honestly,
in their
men
life,
usually
so
they hear period, it's like,
yeah.
but
I like that we all came from the womb, so respect the womb. Notice the uterus necklace as well.
Absolutely, but we spend the rest of our life trying to get back in.
It's
Sorry.
nice
Oh,
and
Shags,
warm.
I'm gonna
All right,
ignore.
that's enough.
All right.
No,
So
thank you. That was wonderful.
before we go into the question and answer period, I want to just quickly introduce the other E-Club members on the call. So May, if you could wave. Hello, May. And then Shags. Hi, Shags.
Hello.
So now I'd like to open it up to any questions. I have 100, but I want to let May or Shags go first.
No, I think I've said enough.
I just wished I discovered this 20, 30 years ago. How do you do research on something like this? And my second question is, have you considered taking this to developing countries, and instead of having the women make pads, do the sewing and make the pads and then having to clean them, to try using the pill as an alternative?
Yes, no, and you may or may not have, you probably know there's a movement to get women menstrual hygiene products because a lot of them are using old rags, or they just don't have access to pads, and certainly not to tampons, and because it's forbidden from going to school. But my thing is, if we turn off periods, then you don't need these feminine hygiene products, or you'll need them far less, and then they can partake fully in school. And there are, cultures where if you have your period, you're deemed as, dirty, and you are banned from religion and participation in society. So we can then eliminate that bleeding and allow them to fully participate in society. I think the hard part is that my friend and I, my endocrinologist friend, we want to rename birth control because it's birth control. So it has a stigma. And you're like, if you give them birth control, they'll have wild, crazy sex, or that it's something to do with sex and sex is dirty, but that's a totally different topic. But if we use this for menstrual control, or if we call this hormonal treatment, or for women achieving equality in education and economics, and for decreasing landfill, so we want to change it from oral contraceptive pill, which is the current framing, OCP, and change it to EPP, estrogen progesterone pill, because we do have progesterone only pills, POP, and so we're like, EPP, estrogen progesterone pill. So if we can propose that, I think maybe it'll be more palatable. The best form, I think, for third world countries would be the ring. They have a ring that you can just put up in your vagina yourself. That's a 1-year ring. And the problem is, like, a drug company made it, and it's patented, and it's $2,000 a year, but maybe they could make a generic that worked for far less. I bet you could probably make it for $50 or even $1. I don't know what the manufacturing is. That would be a very uninvasive way. And another one Farheen and I were discussing before was an implant. So you can put the implant in, and a 10-year-old could be trained to put in the implant. It lasts for 3 years. And then, as I mentioned, 30% will lose their periods. 70% will get their periods later. At any time, if they change their mind, they can just alcohol it up and pull it out, and they can get pregnant. So it's just a question of, that is also on patent, and so it costs like $150. I don't actually have no idea how much that costs. So again, if somebody were to take it on and do it generically and then train people, I think it would be great. It was interesting. I had a friend working at the WHO, World Health Organization. He's adolescent medicine, and then he switched over to the WHO, and the number one problem was anemia. And in medicine, we go, what's the number one cause of anemia in a menstruating woman? Menstruation. So I was like, turn off the periods and you will solve the anemia problem, or you'll decrease a significant portion of it. And it didn't occur to him because it was a him. And also my passion is just turning off periods. No blood.
Dr. Yin, your passion for this, like, is amazing, like, to the extent where I have had similar, like, rants, if I may say, to with so many of my friends too, for the like exact same thing. Like I have multiple Facebook posts about how much periods are the worst.
I'm
And
really
how,
feeling for the female biology right now, honestly,
yeah,
because everybody in my life had cramps.
Yes.
yeah,
Unnecessary. We have a treatment for that. We can
yeah,
turn it off. And so some people, and Farheen was saying she was developing a birth control for men. And even though there will be a birth control for men, one, do I trust them? Because I'm literally going to be the one screwed if they don't. But two, if I don't take something, then I bleed every month, and I don't
But it's
want to bleed
still,
every month.
yeah, it still won't help it if men take birth control
Yes, exactly.
because
I
you
want
still have
to
your menstruation. And I think maybe from a man's perspective, the way they dealt with that and all that ups and down was to keep everyone pregnant. And
Yes.
it could have been in that time that, you know, but I'm happy with my two, and I won't.
so I guess so actually the question that I wanted to say was exactly based off of, you know, your conversation with the endocrinologist about how to rename the pill. So specifically, so I was diagnosed with heavy periods and I used the pill to control that. But, you know, especially when I was younger, I used to hide it because of the taboo around the pill, right? I didn't want my parents to know what I was taking. But, you know, so how do you convince parents that, you know, oral contraceptives are not just for birth control, it's also to regulate your menstrual cycle? Because again, without the pill, I can't function.
Yes. So I think that's what we're doing with this campaign, hashtag periods optional, is that this is hormonal treatment. This is about controlling when and how often you have a period, if you have a period, if you want to have a period. And this is no longer birth control, but this is hormonal treatment. And that's the framing and the phrasing that we have to do. And this is estrogen progesterone pill or estrogen progesterone patch or a progesterone, you know, intrauterine device. But then people can't regulate it. They can't say, you don't have to cover birth control because, you know, it's against my religion, which I think is crazy for a company, because a company doesn't have a soul. Company's not going to heaven or hell. There's certainly shareholders, but the company is an entity and employs people. It's not a person, doesn't have religion, so it shouldn't push its religion on other people. This country was built on freedom of religion, and even people in the same religion, there is Catholics for choice, and it's, you know, same, all Catholics, but different interpretations. So your uterus, your decision, my uterus, my decision. No uterus, don't talk to me about my uterus.
There's a lot to be said for homeostasis.
Yeah.
And then I had one more, you know, question about, like, there are a lot of women who unfortunately can't have hormones, right? They just, you know, it doesn't work for them. I know a lot of my friends who are on the pill or they had the implant, it just didn't work with their bodies. So, you know, to be 100% honest, I used to have an IUD and it did not, it, like, you know, for 1 year it was great, but then after year 2 I started getting 2 periods a month and I was like, no, you know. So then I was like, I can't do this anymore, and I went back to the pill because I was like, I need to not have my really heavy periods. So
Yes.
I guess I'm really curious to hear what is, you know, what are, like, are there any alternatives, you know, to women who just can't have hormones? And do you know any research being done for that? Because to be 100% honest, that is also something that I'm very, very interested in doing as a hopefully future MD.
Yeah, no, in my ideal world, women would have 6 to 16 periods in their life. The periods as you're trying to get pregnant. And I was lucky that after 3 periods, and then after another 3 periods, and I had my 2 kids and I was done. But on average, 80% of women will get pregnant in a year. So I'll give you 8 periods to have 2 kids, and then you'd have 16 periods. But we need that treatment up to that point that's safe to hold it off, and then on the other side as well. And so we have this, but this is not ideal. But what I do want to get out there is a lot of people have tried the pill and then gave up. But know that there are 40 different pills. There are 8 different progesterones. There are 3 different levels of estrogen. So we should be able to find one that works with you. Certainly, if you have a contraindication to hormones, such as a blood clotting disorder, liver disease, or breast cancer that's hormonally sensitive, you should not be on one of these methods. Then there is GnRH, which is a hormone that normally fluctuates during puberty. It goes calm from birth until puberty, and then puberty it goes up and down again. And if you administer it and make it flat, then that turns everything off. The problem is it's crazy expensive, but I think if somebody studied it enough, they could make it inexpensive. And then sometimes there might be some like bone density concerns, but once you're 30 or 35, not an issue, but you still need to cover that person from age 30 to 50. So I think GnRH might be the way to go. And just like we have Depo, which acts every 3 months, you could do a Depo GnRH, or just like we have an IUD, maybe you have a GnRH IUD. The IUD currently only comes with 1 flavor hormone, and it's not the best flavor hormone, because if it were me or my daughter, I would use this flavor, which has less zits, less munchies, less badness on your lipid profile. And so when I prescribe the pill, I prescribe this. I don't prescribe this hormone, which is the one that's in the current IUD and in implant and other ones. And so with respect to birth control, we have a long way to go. We should have IUDs with all the different hormones. We should have implant with all the different hormones, but GnRH might be the way to go. The one thing that holds us against it is the cost and the fact that it's a shot. So we got to find a different way to deliver it, and the length of it being released.
That makes sense. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments?
Only wow, I never knew there were so many options on the different hormones within the spectrum.
Yeah, so there's 8 different progesterones, and I always thought of estrogen as like the female pregnancy hormone, so blood clotting, bigger breasts, and then the progesterones as the manly hormones, meaning acne and hirsutism and mood swings, and then bad lipids. But even amongst the progesterones, there's a progestational effect and then the androgenic effect. And the androgenic effect is what I call the male effect. The progestational is progestational, so growing a baby kind of stuff. And that one, the stronger the progestational effect, the less breakthrough bleeding. So when I'm trying to help,
is there a way to detect a female's present balance, so you can determine which is the best approach?
I don't think we have that research down right now. So what we're trying to do at Pandia Health, because we're the only women-founded, women-led, doctor-founded, doctor-led, but more importantly, an academic who knows publish or perish, but also has scientific inquiry in my head, is I'm trying to correlate if there's ethnic differences in response to birth control. And so as we have 2,000 plus women and the numbers are growing, we ask them to self-report their ethnicity. And so rather than just Asian, which is a giant basket, we're breaking it into all the sub-Asian groups, or breaking it into the sub-European groups, and then seeing if it correlates with this birth control, they do better on it or not. And
let alone all the blends.
Yes. And then when we get if everybody does 23andMe, or they get genetic, mapping of everything, and they share that data with us, we can anonymously match it up and see again if there's patterns. So as the research progresses, and that's where Farheen can come in with her future research and look at that. But we are definitely interested in that. And I do think that different people are different. An example I give, my MIT dorm room, we had one woman every 28 days. We had me every 35 days. We had my friend every 90 days. She has polycystic ovarian syndrome. You could imagine very easy to turn off the 90-day lady. To turn me off, probably doable. The 28-day lady I've learned is crazy fertile, and she's hard to turn off. And the example I give is she drove the other 2 of us to 28 days.
Yeah, your cycles will coordinate.
So she was giving off pheromones, and she is so fertile that she made us sync with her. And I was like, I am a 35-day. Why am I bleeding 28 days? This is not okay. And I was so thankful to get out of that room.
All right, I'm done. But this has been great. It's really been great. I'm glad I was here.
I'm so glad that you joined us.
Thank you.
And I love the allies and feminist men out there.
Oh, it's not feminist. I just, I'm in touch with that, my whole feminine side.
That's
I'm
great.
very domestic.
Alrighty then. So seeing as there are no more questions or comments, Rotary members and guests, please make sure you have filled out the attendance form and leave us a comment. Also, if you have any awesome ideas for a program, please use the link below to submit your ideas. So thank you again, Dr. Yin, and I will turn it back to you for your final words.
Well, thank you so much for watching this. Please share with anybody that's bleeding 1 week out of 4, #periods optional, and pandiahealth.com/periods optional. And then just a bit about Pandia Health. We deliver birth control by mail. So it's about care, convenience, confidentiality, not being slut shamed when you go to the pharmacy and they're like, oh, Sophia, you again for birth control? And then the whole neighborhood finds out. But also the number one reason women don't take their hormonal treatment or their birth control is they didn't have time to run the pharmacy or they ran out. And so what I'm trying to do with this company is making sure no one runs out on our watch, that women have #better things to do than worry and run to the pharmacy every single month.